it's a neat park. State rock is limestone. Who would have figured?
Over here, that is the 2010 flood, if any of y'all from Middle Tennessee. When we had the flood in 2010, that is the high water mark for this area. So we got up there. So we got into here. Now, the park is on a slight incline, so by the time we get to the other end of the park, that side was totally fine. But this end was up to that point, and because of that, everything for the fountain was completely ruined. So initially, they had replaced everything with just a simple on-off pump and all that kind of stuff with the intention of coming back eventually and replacing it with a better system. Well, here 13 years later, we're finally out of necessity. We had a big crack and everything. But the fun thing is that that system was just on-off. The new system that's going in hopefully before next season is going to be more like a pneumatic system that'll like go up and down and dance and stuff, which is what the original system was. So it's off right now, but hopefully for good reasons. What it's here for is to represent the 31 major riverways of Tennessee. Every river in Tennessee flows into what river?
Mississippi.
Mississippi. So this trough that runs along the water that all the fountains flow into is the Mississippi River, called to illustrate that. The river that we like talking about the most at the park is the Duck River. It is the most biodiverse river in all of North America. So it has more biodiversity than all the rivers of Europe combined. Most of that biodiversity comes from mollusks, so snails, mussels, things like that. Our flags, each of the large flags represents 100 years, adding up to 200 years for the Bicentennial, which we represent. And then on each side, there are 8 small flags, adding up to 16 because we're the 16th state in the union. Unlike other state parks that are all natural, one of the cool things about this park is that it's all man-made. So in theory, everything had an intention or an idea behind it on the east side of the country.
Yeah, started out under a tree.
Yes, so this was a pre-existing train trestle. The original one was a earth and wooden train trestle. The state went to CSX, who owns the rail, and asked them if they could replace it with one that would be more fitting for the park. CSX promptly told the state that absolutely they could, and they could pay for it. Well, the intention was kind of for it to be like a love letter to Tennessee. So it represents Tennessee's nature, people, history, culture, tries to pack as much in as possible. Does that by being divided in 2 sides. We're currently on the history side, and the other side that will go down will be the nature side of the park. Okay. The history side starts at 1 billion years ago, and stops at 1996 when the park was built. Because geology takes a really long time, in about 100 feet, we'll jump to 10,000 BC. Yep. Here in front of us, the wall breaks apart. Any guesses why? Civil War. Civil War, yes. So you will see here in 1850, the Civil War has not started, but this is when we have the first discussions of secession. So the wall actually breaks apart on the word secession. It will reform on the other side on the word constitution. Wow. The breaking itself is to help show that fractious period both for the state and the country. Tennessee is the last state to leave the Union, the first state to rejoin the Union, and at one point East Tennessee actually debated splitting off from the rest of the state, similar to how West Virginia split off from Virginia. As I said on the other side, the wall reforms from the word Constitution. That is because all Confederate states, in order to be readmitted to the Union, were required to ratify a new Constitution guaranteeing African American males the right to vote and outlaw slavery. This would actually be Tennessee's 3rd Constitution. This break in the wall here, 1916, of course, the major thing going on in the world is World War I. This is where the park's World War I memorial would have gone, but if you've ever been to the War Memorial Plaza, so the War Memorial Plaza, the actual plaza and everything itself is the World War I memorial. Obviously, that was the war to end all world wars. There was no intention that there would have to be all these other memorials. It's really hard to convince the state to buy a second of something it already has. So that's why we have an empty spot here. The most prominent Tennessean and potentially American to come out of World War I is Alvin C. York. Alvin C. York State Historic Park is actually located at his home in Pall Mall, Tennessee. Unlike the World War I memorial and the memorials for every other war, actually, which are all located at the War Memorial Plaza, this is the official World War II memorial for the state. The columns on either side talk about the Pacific theater and the European theater. The gold stars on the ground represent the 5,731 Tennesseans that died during the war. This is actually the first of a number of time capsules you'll see in the park today. It's going to be open, it'll be the first to be opened as well in 2045 for the 100th anniversary. These 7 benches at the back of the memorial are the 7 Medal of Honor recipients from Tennessee. And then the sphere on the other end is a Kugel fountain. It actually is a map that represents the world as it was at the time. It has lines that show the distances that Tennesseans would have traveled to the different engagements that they participated in. Ironically, coincidentally, however you want to say it, you might have guessed from the name Kugel, the only company that makes those in the world is in Germany. Which is very fascinating. It is actually an 18,000 pound stone that is supported by a credit card thickness of water. I'm not a scientist, like I said earlier. My understanding is that the weight of the stone increases the density of the water until the stone is able to become buoyant. It also is because the socket that it sits in is the exact shape of the sphere itself. That, or it's just magic. One or the other. It's correct. It is, I mean, it is especially hard, but it will, it's weighted so that it will turn itself slowly. Yep, 18,000. Like that. The park's Civil Rights Memorial is a representation of lunch counter stools for the Nashville sit-ins. So the Nashville sit-ins are one of the first and most successful non-violent protests. Part of the inspiration for the park was the National Mall. So it took about 20 years. But in 2018, the State Museum moved down here, and in 2021, the State Library and Archives moved down here, and so they're supposed to be like the park Smithsonian's. If y'all, I'm gonna go play a song, by which I mean I'm going to put a number into a computer, and the computer's going to play a song. But this is the park's bell carillon. It is a 95 bell system. Those 95 bells represent the 95 counties of Tennessee. There's a 96th bell on the Capitol Hill that's supposed to represent the government. Top of each hour, 95 bells ring. That one rings afterwards. It's supposed to represent the government answering the call of the people. At the top of every hour, it'll also play a Tennessee song. So Irish Time in Tennessee, Chattanooga Choo Choo, songs like that. That's
pretty cool.
Top. I'm gonna play Hava Nagila just because I think it's the best song on the. It's not too complicated. Elvis Presley songs were not meant to be in bell form. Right. Or at least that was not the original intention. Whereas Hava Nagila is a nice, very melodic song. Like I've mentioned on the other side, this represents the natural aspects of Tennessee. So before you are the Smoky Mountains. As we go down through the park, the berms will get shorter and shorter as though you're going through East Tennessee into Middle Tennessee, and eventually completely flat as though you're going to West Tennessee. The foliage will also change.
And the counties are represented in the area.
Yep. So we're currently in East Tennessee. The flora will also change. So here you have hardwoods, big leaf magnolias, things like that you find at a higher elevation. Middle Tennessee, you have cedar trees, and then finally in West Tennessee, you're going to have cypress and swamp oaks that you find in the marshier pine forests. We're now entering Middle Tennessee. In Middle Tennessee, we have cedar trees. Those cedar trees are not true cedar trees. Again, Europeans, not always the best at naming things or recording things. So when they came to North America and saw these trees, they reminded them of old world cedar trees, and so they called them cedar trees. They're actually juniper trees. The reason we have them is because they're here to represent the microenvironments that are found in Tennessee called cedar glades. They're only found in Middle Tennessee and nowhere else in the world. Because of our abundance of limestone, there are some areas where that limestone is exposed directly to sunlight, and the sunlight heats that rock up to such an extent that it creates a desert-like environment. So it's the only place in Tennessee you'll find prickly pear cactus. There are lots of native wildflowers that are only endemic to those areas. And then cedar trees are extremely hardy, so you'll have cedar trees. The really cool thing about them, is that you can see the entire environment evolve in front of you. So you can stand in one spot and see large slabs of rock. Then over time, that rock breaks up because of erosion, because of plants growing in those cracks. Then as those plants fall and decay, you start getting dirt, and then eventually get to deciduous forest. It's very fascinating to see. They're also here because, again, that limestone, that karst topography, so it helps to represent it, and that's why the reliquary is placed in this area. It is the largest map of Tennessee in the world. At least that's what we claim, and no one's told us anything differently. We don't know why it would be anywhere else. It shows all of the major highways, roadways, riverways, railways of Tennessee. The lights are the 95 county seats of Tennessee.
Oh. So that was absolutely awesome. Learning a lot about the architecture and history of the Bicentennial Mall. Ranger Gibson, Jackson Gibson. Awesome tour guide. What was your favorite part?
I guess the bells, you know.
Oh yeah. Yep. That was great. I think the whole thing was great. Yeah.